All right, everybody, welcome back to another animation Ask a Dev. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. It's like I've done this intro so many times. Anyways, welcome back to Ask a Dev. We are working and we are continuing our control rig journey. Specifically, recently we've been talking about FK and IK, forward and inverse kinematics, and reverse foot and foot roll, and it's about time to bring all that stuff together. So we are actually going to be working with FK IK switching and giving ourselves the ability to choose whether or not we're going to animate in FK or IK mode, and then we're going to take a look at real-time FK IK snapping depending on time, which is going to blow the minds of Maya users and stuff like that because of the differences in the way the graph works. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and let's hop straight into Unreal and take a look at what we're talking about, where we are. So here we are with our control rig. Let me actually save this as a new rig. So let's save this as, we're going to save this as our, not our reverse foot roll. We're going to call this FK IK snap, just so we have it. And let's just close this down and reopen it just to make sure we have the right one. Okay, so where we left off was, as I mentioned, we have a reverse foot, we have our IK controls, and we have a bunch of FK controls, which are for right now all of our arm and spine, etc. joints. Now, these work by default because of all the work we did in the forward kinematics video. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, there's a link around here somewhere. Click on that, and basically these are controls that are being built on the fly procedurally, which is a lot of fun. Now, in order to properly demonstrate and talk about FK IK snapping, we do need some FK controls for our legs. So let's go ahead and grab those. If we collapse our spine, we're going to be working with the left leg today. Going to right click, I'm choosing new, add controls for selected. That's going to create a bunch of controls for us. We're going to do the exact same thing we've been doing so far. We're just going to take all of these. We'll go ahead and change these to circle fix, and we'll rotate them 90 degrees, and then we'll do some scaling so they're easily selectable. Same thing with, and then what I do want to do is for the ball, I'm going to bring this down in size a little bit so that it's not giant. And then for my hip, because sometimes it's difficult to grab this, I'm actually going to offset the shape in X, just to make it a little bit easier to grab. So it's not stuck right up against the body control. So it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so now we have a series of FK controls. These are our thighs, our thigh through our ball. I'm going to parent these in appropriately. And where I'm going to parent these is, I'm going to parent these, actually a lot of this stuff needs to be parented in, but let's just parent this thigh control to the pelvis. We'll go like that for now, okay? Now, by default, let's see if this works. If we grab our leg, you'll notice that we can move our controls, and this is where we get into why we need FK IK switches and snapping, okay? Right now we have FK controls that we want to be able to control our leg with. You can see as I rotate them, they are moving. However, the leg's not. But if we move our IK controls, our leg works fine. That is because we stole all of, this is our construction script. This is the construction script. And if you recall from that FK setup video, we basically went through and programmatically find all the controls in the rig and set them up. That's cool. The same thing is happening down here in our forward solve. We find all the controls in the rig and we set the values, but look what happens. After we set the values for the FK controls, we have a sequence, and the next thing we do in our sequence is we come down here and we set all of our IK leg stuff. So if we simply swap the order of these, you'll notice that now my FK controls work. I can now pose my leg using FK controls, like so. but my IK controls no longer work. So what we need is a way to give our animators the ability to choose which one they're going to use. So what we are going to do is on our, I think we're going to put this on a layout control. We're going to give our animators a animation channel to work with. So over here on the right, let's add an animation channel. We are going to call this, I'm going to call this the left leg IK enable, for example. And I'm going to change this to be a Boolean. Now, just like we did before when we were doing the animation channel video, if we select our left leg IK enable, we set our initial condition to true. That way, because by default for the legs, we probably want them to start in IK because they're usually in contact with the ground. And now all we need to do is, let's flip this back. All we need to do is use this new channel to decide whether or not FK or IK is active. So here's what we're going to do. Let's get this animation channel. And the channel that we're getting is our left leg. And I also do want to make one other change in here. Just like we discovered in our animation channels video, I do want to rename the script name of this to be the proper name. So it's there. Okay, so all we need to do is, if this is true, we're going to do IK. And if it's false, we're going to do FK, for example. That's the plan. All right, let's see if we can't set that up. It's pretty simple. We're not going to use this sequence anymore. And I don't want to confuse you, but I am going to swap this because my FK is up here and I don't want to change my entire order right now. So what I'm going to say is, if this is not IK enabled, then I want to do forward kinematics. So if it's not IK enabled, we're going to do forward kinematics. And if it is IK enabled, in other words, if that's false, we're going to do IK. So literally just adding that animation channel gives us the ability to choose. So here we are. If we rotate our FK leg, you'll notice it is not having any effect on our character. That is because when we pick the layout control, our IK is enabled. If we uncheck this box, you'll notice that my leg updates. So I, as an animator, can now just uncheck and check this box to choose whether I want to animate in IK or FK. Pretty easy, right? That's it, we're done. No, we're not, it's not that easy. This is really great, but this also illustrates not a problem, but a workflow. I'm gonna call it a workflow. So as an animator, when I'm working, if I have taken the time to pose my leg, first off, there's a couple things about this. Right now I have both IK and FK visible all the time. That's fine, that's a minor thing. We can just connect our enable to the visibility, but I wanna keep them visible for now so that you can see it, because we are going to be working with trying to get these things to line up. So as an animator, as I'm working on a scene, it is very common to want to align our FK controls to our IK controls or vice versa. The reason for that is, when we're animating, let's say our foot is in contact with the ground and then all of a sudden the character jumps in the air and does a flip. It is a lot easier to animate a forward flip using an FK leg than an IK leg, because as the character rotates, the legs will just go with the character. So what you might do is, as you leave the ground, switch to FK. At that moment, if the FK leg is over here in space and the IK leg is over here in space, you'll get a snap. You can get a pop in the frame. So there's a lot of tooling that is done in various programs to do what is called FK-IK snapping. And literally what it means is we want to take the FK leg and align it to where the IK leg is. So for example, if you're animating an IK, when you start that launch position, you want to start your FK leg from where the IK leg was. So we're going to align our FK to our IK and then launch, or vice versa. You're in the air, the character is doing their flip. I know that looks like I'm calling myself crazy, but it looks like the character's doing the flip. Just before they hit the ground, you want to transition back to IK. Well, you want to align your IK leg to where your FK controls are so you don't have big step changes in your curves and controls and all those kinds of things. Now, I want to caveat that a little bit. Unreal is a new paradigm for animating, and there are things in Unreal Engine that potentially change the way we work. I want to leave room for the fact that there are potentially alternative workflows and methods based on all the wild, cool stuff that is in Control Rig. So one of those we're going to be talking about right now. Generally speaking, when you do FK, IK snapping and a lot of other tools, there is a lot of other programs, there is a separate tool that will help you do that. Because, and this is going to blow my user's mind, because of the way Control Rig works and the graph works, because it's event based, what we can do is we can do live FK, IK snapping without creating what is called a cycle in some of these old programs. So literally what we're going to do right now is we are going to make it so that our FK leg is always aligned to the IK leg. I know this is very long-winded, but it's important. We're going to make it so our FK leg is aligned to our IK leg whenever we're in IK mode and vice versa. So let's do that. Now, before we do this, I do want to make a couple of changes because I want to be clear on which controls I'm working with. So I am going to rename a couple of my controls. I am going to choose for now until I have a better reason not to do this. I'm going to intentionally call my controls FK controls, because now that we're working in a world where we can have IK controls and FK controls controlling the same thing, our procedural script to just basically align any control to whatever's happening no longer really works. And we need to be a little bit more selective as our control rigs become a little more complicated. So I'm renaming all of my legs to be FK control, and that is actually going to break all of my procedural setups. So in order, for the purpose of this demo, I'm not going to fix everything. I'm just going to make it so that our FK controls work again. So I'm going to, the search and replace we were doing where we were looking for underbar control, we're going to change that to underbar FK control. Same thing here. So now, although I spelled that wrong. Okay, now when we do that, that should bring us back to life. And I think if we switch this and we make sure we're in FK mode, our leg still works FK. So that simple change fixed that. We now have an FK and an IK leg, okay? But now all of our upper arms and everything, they no longer work because they're not called FK anymore. So we could add a section to that, but for time's sake, I'm not gonna worry about that right now. But just be aware that that is a thing that we will have to fix as well. Okay, so now we have our FK and we have our IK controls. All we want to do is we want to, when we are in IK mode, which is this second branch down here, right here, what we are going to do is we are going to align our FK to our IK positions. This is awesome. So let's take a sequence. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do in our sequence, let's make some room here. And also we're starting to get to a point where our graphs are getting kind of crazy, so we're going to start building some functions as well, because this is getting a little unwieldy. All right, so this effectively is, we can even comment it, this is going to be our IK leg and reverse foot roll, for example. Okay, oops. All right, that way we know what that is explicitly. Now, what we want to do is we want to align our FK to our IK. Now, I'm being very deliberate about how I say that, because depending on who you talk to, it can get confusing. I'm going to align my FK controls to where my IK controls are first. So to do that, we are going to use a lot of the same procedural logic that we were doing before. And what we're going to do, I am going to take, and this time rather than just taking all the controls, I'm going to take all of the leg controls specifically. I'm going to right click and I am going to I'm blanking on where it is. I want to make an array from selected. Hold on, new, control, naming, mirror, space switching. Where did it go? I lost it. Ah, there you go. Just drag it in, create an item array from selected. So that is a quick cheat for me to create an item array that is basically all of my left leg FK controls. So this is going to be the array that I'm going to use to drive my snapping now. And we are basically going to reuse all of this. Okay, so let's copy and paste this down here. Except instead of doing all the controls, we're going to do just the FK controls. And instead of, yeah, we're even going to keep the global space bone. Okay, so this is basically what this is going to do is this is going to find all of the bones for each of our FK controls, and then it's going to align our FK controls to this. So as part of our sequence, and it's going to be wild when I connect this. Okay, right now it hasn't happened yet because we're still in FK mode. But when we switch to IK, watch what happens. One other mistake. We're actually setting the bone. This is not right. We want to set our FK controls. So hold on, I picked the wrong thing. We're getting the bone. Let's set the control name. Let's see here. We're getting a list of controls. We're substituting. If the bone exists, we're getting the, rather than getting the item, we need to get the bone of name, and like so. That's it. Okay, cool. So now, when we move this, we're still not seeing this. Hold on a second. Where are we missing here? Warning. Thigh left is not valid. That's because we are supposed to be using the control, which is this one. There we go. Whew. Okay, important. I cut and pasted from the wrong one. What's important about aligning our FK controls to our IK locations is we get a list of FK controls, we find the bones, we get the position of the bone, and then we align that bone to then we align that control to our to the current bone position, which is being driven by the IK control. So now look at the difference. Our FK controls are now following our IK controls. They are live snapping. This is like mind-blowing for Maya users, okay? Because if you do this in Maya, what you can get in without doing a lot of extra work, you get what's called a cycle, and you have a control setting a bone, which is setting the control, which is setting the original control, which creates this loop, and your rig goes nuts. They're called cycles. But anyways, the point is now wherever we position this in our scene, we've got the ability for our FK controls to follow our IK. Now, the cool thing is when we turn this off, you'll notice that I just turned it off, and you'll notice that my IK no longer controls, it's no longer controlling my leg, and my leg is already snapped in place to where it's supposed to be. Dude, that's amazing. We literally just set up live FK snapping. Now, FK is easy. This is where it starts to get tricky, and I'm going to explain to you why that is. So here we go. Let me explain to you what's happening. No matter what you do with your IK control, the FK controls can accommodate that position. However, the reason going the other way, aligning our IK rig to where the FK controls are, is difficult is because of two things. One, we have our reverse foot. Our reverse foot, remember, is the backwards hierarchy, so the ankle position changes. Two, there are limitations inside our IK solver where it is possible in FK to bend the knee outside of the plane of the solver. It is a very difficult problem to find an appropriate knee position when you are limited by what the solver can do. Now there's all kinds of cool different solutions. You can use knee offsets, and we're not going to get into all that. We're just going to set up a solution that will work, but it's also like it's a lot. This is going to be a fun little adventure. Now let me show you how much of a fun adventure it is. This is the control rig that comes with the third person demo project, okay? And what I want to show you is, much like the setups that we've been doing, it has a lot of the same features in here. However, to illustrate how difficult this is, if we pick the layout control and we take our left leg FK-IK switch and we turn it off, you'll notice that it switches to FK fine, which, remember, I said is pretty easy. But when we go back, look what happens. Did you see how the foot moves? We don't want that, okay? A lot of people would call that unstable or destructive, but it illustrates how difficult the problem is, because really smart people help set these rigs up. They come as part of these projects, and these things still exist. Now, are we going to get a perfect solve? No, but we are going to, I think we're going to get to a better solve than this, because look what happens. If I continually uncheck and recheck, what's happening is my rig is in a never-ending battle with itself, where it is literally going to spin out of control and never get back to it. So we're going to do a whole lot of jumping through hoops to hopefully come up with a better solution than that. With the caveat of, one, we're going to learn a lot, period. We're going to learn a lot. Two, all of this stuff needs to be proven in production. We need to spend some time animating with it. We need to figure out where the holes are, the gaps are, etc. So take it with a grain of salt. Think about this as a learning experience. All right. So now let's start the adventure. And to kind of explain some of the problem, if we switch to FK, which is where we're going to be going now, what we want is, when we're in FK mode, we want the IK leg to align. All right, so first step, let's get this ball control to be in the right place. Okay, so to do that, let's think about the best way to start here. Let's get, all right, let's do this. Okay, so here we are. This is our sequence, because we are in IK mode. Okay, great. So let's make some room here. Let's move all of this down. Make some room. Okay, so here we are. We know that we're in FK mode, and we're going to pop in another sequence, so that after we finish setting our FK controls, what we're going to do is we're going to start our real-time snapping. And one thing we could do, as an example, is we could get the ball. If we just come up here and we grab the ball, this is not what we're ultimately going to do. Let's get the bone transform. Okay, and then let's take our left IK foot, which was down there. Let me collapse this so we can find what we're looking for. Here is our left foot. Let's set this. And we're going to set this to be here. Step one. And actually, I don't want the ball. What I want is I want the foot. Okay, so now that is in place. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So if nothing at all, that is at least a great step in the right direction. Even if you do that, animation could probably work with it to a certain extent. However, we do have problems. So our problems come in when we start doing things like, how do we get the pole vector to be in the right place? So let's deal with the pole vector. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to reuse the stuff that we were doing up here to calculate the pole vector. So we're going to get the calf, the rotator, we're going to add to that, and then we're going to project out a vector from the knee, and that's going to be where we're going to place our pole vector for now. Okay, So let's go ahead and paste that in here. Oops, I missed a couple pieces of it, or at least one piece of it. Okay, so now this is going to set our translation, and we are going to connect that into, nope, I missed. Okay, so this is automatically setting our pole vector. I'm going to make this side a little bit bigger, so hopefully we've got this. So we're setting our foot control and we're setting our pole vector. This is especially important when we start doing things like moving our knee off axis. Now, this is a great example of a problem because generally speaking, the IK solver can't bend the knee off like this. So what's going to happen is when we snap this back, you'll notice that the knee's going to pop. However, if we uncheck it and recheck it, if we keep doing this, we don't have a problem. So it's just the first one. It is the best we can do given the rigging knowledge we have so far, and it is more stable than, for example, what we were seeing in the default one. But we also have not tackled the challenge that is the reverse foot. And that is where things start to go bonkers. So step one, we actually have a pretty good FK-IK snap. It's pretty sweet. But the trick, this is where it gets nuts. The trick in here is to deal with the reverse foot. And what I mean by that specifically are okay, so we're currently FK. So if we rotate our foot back, put it in plane, maybe something like this. And then let's just say that we were going to do something like rotate onto the ball of our foot, for example. Well, the problem is with the current snapping, it is not going to put any of this information on the reverse foot. It is all going to get put onto, you have to make a choice, all right? You have to make a choice. You either need to put this onto the IK control and the ball offset. That will work. It is a simple solution. However, you'd probably have to have a conversation with Team Anim, right? Figure out if Team Anim is whether they're more inclined to have the ball, basically everything on the ball offset and the IK foot, and then they have to go back and pose it themselves using the reverse, or vice versa. But we're going to go ahead and do the tough one. So there's a couple things that we need to change. What we want is that when we rotate this ball, we want the foot to go with it, the reverse foot specifically. So what we're going to do is we are going to take, and rather than setting this control to the position of the foot, what we are going to do is we are going to use a tool that we haven't talked about, so it's a little unfair. We're going to call project to new parent. All right, and what we are going to project, what this does, let me get it set up. So we're going to take, we know we're working with the foot control, not the FK one. We're going to be working with the left foot. We're going to take the left foot. And what we're going to do is we are going to, it's basically like the way this works is it creates a temporary parenting, if you will, takes all of that transform information and converts it back to the space that you want it to be in. So in this particular case, we're going to use the ball left for both of these. And we'll probably have to do a separate video on project to parent. But basically what this does is it says, take the left foot control, pretend that it is parented underneath the ball joint, then give me back the transform that it would have been if it was in that space, but in the world of the foot control. So it's kind of like a really weird live parent constraint type thing. But, oh, actually that's a really good idea. Let's go ahead and compile. We compiled it. All right, let's go ahead and get back our pose. But I wanted to compile and save real quick. Okay, so we have our pose. Let's get our pose back. Rotate this in place. And then we had said that we were going to, now watch what happens now when I rotate the ball. Watch what happens to this foot control. So as we rotate this now, you'll notice that it bends down. This is a lot more in line with how the reverse foot control works, because usually what you would do is this would be flat and you would raise onto the ball of your foot. So this is perfect. We're moving our foot control. Now we get to the fun part, figuring out, backward calculating what this ball control rotation, the reverse ball control rotation, needs to be in order to get it to align with the current position of where the ankle is. So that's what I mean when I said things are kind of bonkers, because we are going to need to set up a couple of helper nodes to help us figure this out. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to take this enable. I'm going to change my initial so that, because we're going to be accidentally hitting compile a few times here. And what we are going to do is we need a couple of nodes to help us out. So here's what we're going to do. Imagine that you are standing at the ball of this, super sensitive still. All right, imagine that you're standing at the ball of this foot. And what we want to do is, as the ball rotates, we're going to counter animate that. To do that, we're going to use two null nodes. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the child and we're going to constrain it back to the foot. So what's going to happen is, as the parent rotates, the child is going to be counter animating to always point at where it originally started from. And that is going to give us a series of rotational values that are exactly what we need to plug in to our, eventually into our reverse foot control local rotation space values. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we're going to make some room here. And what we need to do is let's take and let's move this off. And let's just kind of make a couple of our nodes, our nulls first, and get this going. Over here, what we want to do is we want to put a null underneath the control pose. Okay, so let's add a null here, new null, and I'm going to call this the left ball RV reverse FKIK ATT. Now I'm calling it the ATT because I'm not totally settled on this naming convention. Do not take this as naming convention advice, but in an old life, ATT stood for attach node. I don't know what to call it right now because we've got a couple of these coming, so I'm just going with that. So this is our attach node, and the idea is this is the one that holds the position and rotation values because we're moving it in space, and then the child underneath it is going to be all zeroed out. So let's create a new null underneath this, and this one we are going to name the exact same thing. And this is going to be our offset. All right, now what I'm going to do so that you can visualize this, it looks like we lost our pose. Basically, there's a couple ways to potentially solve this math. We could use aim constraints, we could use arm constraints, and there is a matrix math version of this. However, it hurts my brain. And also, because I'm highly visual, also I think the visual version of this will make more sense. But if you are a matrix genius, please help us out. Throw comments down below. Let us know what the easy matrix version of this is. But for now, what we're going to do is I'm going to add a couple of visuals here. So let's go new. And in this case, we're going to put a control here. And I am going to make this control a wedge. We'll do thick. And actually, let's do thin, wedge thin. And then let's make this parent wedge a lighter color. And then the offset, we're going to add another new control. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make this a wedge. I'm not going to worry about naming them because we're just going to delete these. These are literally just visuals to help you all see what's going on. So we've got another wedge. We'll keep that one red so they're different. That way we can notice the rotation changes. And then let's make the top one a little bit bigger so that there's some difference. That way you can see. So we have the two in here. Now, what we want to do is Let's get a pose. Let's get a pose back in here. Okay, so what we want to happen is as this rotates, we want the parent wedge to do exactly what it's doing. It's following our FK control. And what we want is we want the smaller one, the offset, we want that to counter animate. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to take the child, which is here, this offset, and we are going to constrain it back to the foot, but maintain offset. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do a rotation constraint. And what we're going to constrain is our null, this offset null. And what we're going to constrain it to is the bone for the left foot. So let's go foot left. Now what you should see right away, and you can see it already working. What's happening now is you can see we have the current position based on our FK foot control, so sensitive. And now when we rotate our ball, you'll notice that the actual child, the offset, remains behind. It's not really remaining behind. What it is doing is it is actually maintaining the original rotation relative to the new parent. And if you look at this, let's go look at this, what you'll notice is the values that are on this offset, these are the rotation values that we can use to plug right into our reverse ball control. So let's do that. So all we're going to do is we are going to, let's see, do I want a sequence here? Yeah, I'm actually, you're going to see me, because this is going to jump cut. There is a sequence in here, but this is going to go away. Basically, when we get into pull vectors here in a minute, you'll understand why. But for now, what we're going to do is we are going to take we're going to get this, let's get this null, and we're going to take, and this is going to be super important, we're going to take the rotation from this reverse null, and what we're going to do is we are going to plug that into our left ball reverse control, and we're going to set rotation. We want to make sure we're only setting rotation, and what we need to do is we need to do it in, this is important, the right space. If we plug this in, something goes funky, that is because, well, one, we don't have anything plugged in. So let's go ahead and plug in our rotation. Okay, so that gets us back. Now, what we also need to do, because the values are going to be incorrect, we don't want to do this in global space. We want to do this in local space. And the reason we want to do in local space is, remember, we are using Euler offsets, 20 degrees, 10 degrees, etc., to drive all of the underpinning of our reverse foot. So with that simple change, that should be it. We are now counter animating and basically on the fly backward calculating the rotation values that we need to use in order to place onto our reverse ball. Okay, now let's see how we did here. If we look at this as, we would want this to be a pose, for example, when we switch back to IK, how much does our foot move? Let's see how we did. Let's do it from, we'll do it from this angle, okay? Oh, dude, did you see that? It didn't move. It did move. That's great, right? And now, look at this. Now we're in IK and our ball rolls in the right place. This is bonkers. Like, this is insane. For people coming from Maya and other tools, like, the ability to do this is just, it breaks your brain. And this is why I encourage anybody who's making this transition, bring your expertise, bring your experience, but also be open to potential new workflows and ideas and stuff like that. So this is crazy cool. So anyways, we have now set it up so that our IK snapping is working. And the cool thing about it is, let's see if we can test this, ultimate test. switching back and forth, you'll notice our foot's not moving. We don't have that constant looping degradation that's happening in the default mannequin body one, which is cool. So at this point, we're solid. Like, we're there. We pretty much have, let me think. We have a lot of the pieces we need to have a pretty cool default control setup for bipedal characters. Now there's some other things that are coming, but we're getting there. So real quick recap. What we've got now is we've got our FK controls being driven by the normal FK setup. We have our IK controls that are being driven by the IK setup. We have the ability to switch between them. The only tricky parts are the work that we did with the aim constraints to backward calculate which way the reverse ball rotations need to be, as well as the pole vector. Those were the tricky parts. Everything else was pretty simple. So even if all you did was just take the first half of the video and just kept basic IK-FK switching in with real-time updates, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome to be able to do that. So with that, we are actually going to call our FK-IK switching tutorial wrap. As always, thank you for checking out these videos. Thanks for being the best part of this. Our community is really the best part of doing all these videos. I learned so much by helping answer your questions and stumbling through all of this stuff with you. So thank you very much. My name's Kevin. As always, anything you can do to help out the channel, spread the word. We have the Patreon, the super chats, all those things. Don't forget to check out the live section. A lot of our tutorials are in the live section because we try to do live Unreal tutorials. We have just, I jokingly say we have just the right amount of crazy to try to do this stuff live once a week. But as always, thanks for checking out the videos, and we will see you on the next one, where we are probably going to be talking about spaces or maybe projected parents or something. We'll come up with something cool. All right, take it easy, y'all. Have a good one.